Alright, today's quote-unquote lesson, let me come on, computer, is GM's responsibility. A very, what's the word I'm looking for? Touchy subject, I should say. Um, as everyone is, like, people are, the first thing they say is, well, we're doing this to have fun. We're not here to do homework or anything like that. And I would wholeheartedly disagree with that, because if you're a GM, especially if you're a player, you only have to really worry about, like, you don't have much preparation to do. But if you're a GM, you have to prepare. Um, the number one thing that obviously this should be super obvious, but every GM needs to understand is, if you never schedule a game or prepare an adventure, eventually your campaign will fail. So one of the reasons why I'm super crazy about scheduling and people showing up and everything is because I've seen what happens when you're lax with it, and especially with Star Trek. I've said this before. It's not D&D where people will, like, sell their firstborn son to be in a game. This is Star Trek, where people are like, well, it's Star Trek, so I'm gonna go hang out with my friends instead. So, like, as a GM, you have to be aware of that, and I hate that that's a thing, because I personally think Star Trek is, I mean, obviously Star Trek's my favorite show of all time, so obviously I think it's like the best franchise ever. But as far as like all that it has to offer, I feel like it has way more flexibility. You can do combat, you can do diplomacy, you can do exploration and science. You got so much that you have to offer, and obviously depends on your GM and what they want to give you as a player. Um, but yeah, anyway, so being a GM, as you who have been a GM before know, is a huge responsibility. Even if you're not like me and you don't, really care about the stories and the worlds, weaving them together so that they make sense. You still have to read it. Like, let's say you're not a super creative person and you're just not into the whole writing thing, and you just want to do a module. Well, that's perfectly fine, but you still have to read and study the pre-written module beforehand. I'm the kind of person where, like, I'll glance at a module. Like, I've never actually done a module, but I know myself well enough to know, like, if I was going to do a module, I would glance at it, skim it, and then I would, like, literally, as we're doing the game, I would just, like, read it, like, verbatim to the players. And that's one of the reasons why I don't do a module, because it's not going to be as immersive as if you're in my personal game that I actually care about. Um, Now, I've played in modules, and I've recently with Mac on another server. We have played in a few modules. I played on other servers with other players in some modules, and there's a noticeable difference between a module and something that a GM has created. And when I say module, I obviously mean a pre-written official module. Um, but even if you're only going by the seat of your pants, like, you still have to do, like, the bare minimum, and that's still more than what the players are going to have to do. All the players have to do is worry about their characters. um, and obviously the social contract is, like we discussed last week. Yeah, you are there to have fun, but you're also there to make sure others have fun. And so therefore that means, your responsibility as a GM is, even sometimes, like, if you're just not feeling it, like, oh, I just can't get the motivation to do this game today, that's okay. You can postpone the game. It's all good. But, like, if you have like 5 to 7 players, and you have a responsibility to them. Like, if you wait to, like, the last minute, like 1 minute before the game starts, and you just message them like, yeah, sorry, I'm just, I can't do it because of some bullshit reason. Like, to me, that's pretty shitty. And again, all this is from my point of view, my perspective over the 4 years that I've been doing this. I haven't really, the main thing that I've experienced as far as, like, a bad GM is the GM that, like, GMs for 1 or 2 episodes, and then basically it's like, okay, someone else take over. And it's like, okay, well, why did you start this if you're going to let me take over? Because it's always been, the games that I've been in, I probably played in half a dozen games, and 4 or 5 of those I have taken over. Because the GM was just like I'm too busy, and of course me being me, I'm like, well, I love this game, so I'm going to take over because I don't want it to end. Um, but like if you, a lot of it is just people don't plan ahead very well. They don't look at, okay, well, I have this amount of time open and available. They just assume, okay, well, next week I'll have that amount of time, and then something comes up and they completely forget about the game, or maybe they forgot about their appointment or something. But like that's why I have a calendar. I have a calendar on the server. I don't have a calendar for me because for the most part, and I have had a calendar for myself in the past, but for the most part, I pretty much remember all the games that I'm in and all the games that I'm responsible for GMing. And if anything ever comes up, I automatically go to that calendar in my head or in real life, and I'm like, okay, if it's conflict, I'm like, okay, well, which one's more important? If it's a real life emergency or something like that, then I'm like, hey guys, and I message you immediately, put an announcement, hey, no game today, blah blah blah. But if it's something where it's like, I mean, I'll give you, well, no, I can't give you that example since it happens a lot. But one example is like, if one of my family members is going somewhere and they're like, hey, come with me, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna have fun, blah blah blah, and I'm just like, okay, obviously I want to do that. I mean, if it's something I want to do, most of the time it's not, but if it's something I want to do, then I'll be like, a lot of time it's just spending time with family. I'll be like, I want to do that, but like I've got to weigh it. Like if it's something where like it doesn't happen often, like if it's something like, I don't know, my sister comes in from across the state, and it's like I'm only going to be here a week or something. Let's hang out and spend time together. That's one thing. I would, but I wouldn't do it like a minute before the game. It'd be like at the very least several hours beforehand. But if it's something like where my brother, who I see every day, then I'm just gonna probably be like, nah, I'm good. Got stuff to do. Sorry. Um, so the other thing is, you also have, not only do you have to schedule the game, and you have to make sure that the players know about it and that they show up. Back in the day, and I've seen this and I've heard this, but back in the day you could just be like, yeah, same time next week, and forget about it, and then trust that people will show up. But that's, especially with online gaming, and even more with Star Trek, that's just saying that is not enough. You've got to, and it's not with everyone. Obviously, some people with a memory like a trap or with nothing going on, they'll be there. But a lot of people, just life, they just forget, and so you've got to continuously put it in the messages, in the message board. Don't forget, 3 days to game, 1 day to game, 6 hours to game, 1 hour to game. You have to keep doing that. You got to message people, and when you have like 15, 20 people in a campaign, like I have, after a while, messaging them individually gets really, really tiring. But as a GM, it's one of the things. It's like, okay, you can either do that, or you can see who does show up and who doesn't, and kind of let those 5 to 7 players be your main core, which is kind of what we did pretty much last year, season 3. Basically, I stopped caring about the people that showed up intermittently, and I focused on the 5 to 7 players that showed up every single time. If you as a GM forget about a game, more than likely your players will too. So that goes, and that's one of the reasons why I want the server to be more active in general chat and in other chats. Because if we're talking about it, oh, I can't wait for this game. Oh, I wonder what happened, with the Delta colony. I don't know, and we're continuously talking about it over the week or whatever. Then that'll help remind us, okay, there is a game, in such and such, however many days. And yeah, that's kind of like there's a whole bunch of reasons for making sure the server stays active, but that's one of them. Next is the less you plan, the less you care. And this is probably, again, another controversial thing, but this is what I believe. I'm not saying you have to do what I do, which is have like 3 or 4 notebooks per season. That's obviously way too much for just normal people. I'm not normal, but like if you're just like if you do what I said, which is just what I would do with a pre-written module and just skim it, and then be like, okay, cool, I'll read that when the game comes. And clearly, you're not really interested in GMing that. At the very least, that module, perhaps not even the entire campaign. So, if you don't actually plan for your games, then you don't actually care about your games, and that's how I see it. And that, again, that might be different for everyone, but that's how I see it, and that's how I view it, and that's how when people act the way they do on the server, whether they mean to or not, that's how I see it. It's just like, okay, well, they don't care. Um, the less you care, the less you will plan. So it's like a cycle. If you don't care, you're not going to plan very much because you don't care. Then your game will start to take a toll. It'll start to take the toll on the game. It'll start, quote unquote, it'll start to suck. And what happens next? Your players will feel that, and they will stop caring as much as they did. And like I said, it's a cycle. It will keep going until the game grinds to a halt. And a lot of times it's not that. A lot of times it's a great game, but like scheduling sucks, or the GM's burnt out, or this or that. But a lot of times it's like it's just that people stop caring, and sometimes that's just how it goes. And um, if you so preparing doesn't just mean like taking notes, reading books, obviously, but if you care enough to prepare in a way that is obvious to your players, and I'm not saying like you have to know every stat block for every monster, every NPC, but like if there's a point where it's like, okay, what's the rank of the security officer, and then you're just like, I don't know, lieutenant, I guess, maybe, then that starts to people start looking at each other like, and I'm guilty of that, obviously. Like, I do that all the time, but it's mainly because like players go places and do things that I just am not prepared for. It's not because like I don't care about it per se. It's just I didn't think of that a particular bit to include. But like if it's something obvious, like you send an NPC to talk to someone and you don't even give them a name, obviously your players are going to pick up on that. But if you prepare and you prepare enough that it's obvious to the players, then they will. First of all, your game will obviously be better, but also your players will notice and they will also start to care more. Um, and the last thing I have here is,
Can I address that?
yeah.
Okay. So I am of the polar opposite school of everything he just said. I like my games to be loose and fun, and planning kind of like I used to plan when I was a kid, and they all just went to shit. So because you plan so much, and you're like you can plan for every outcome, and the players will inevitably find a way to be like to do something you couldn't possibly plan. So that's why, like, for each episode of the games that I was running, it was literally a paragraph, and then I would build on your actions. So if you take a left turn, I was like, all right, well then you hit a dead end or something, and then you have to climb over it. It's a clunky metaphor, but I think you guys get it. So basically, this isn't a job. It's not, work. Don't treat it like work, because you will stop enjoying it. You will burn yourself out. It is for fun. And the most important part of being a GM is, build your game, have things for the players to do. But at the end of the day, if you're not having fun GMing, it will translate into your players not having fun. They will sense it in you. Like your tone, just the way you speak, your cadence, like your volume. It's all very important to. If you're not happy doing what you're doing, you should not be doing it. So if you have a campaign where it's like, this is miserable, I hate it, your players are going to feel that, and they're not going to want to play. So, like you're gonna find people who just like don't like the way the story's going or don't like your GM style, and they're gonna leave, and that's fine because not everyone's gonna agree on these things. Like me and Infamous here do not agree on this, but we're not at each other's throats with it. He's gonna. I enjoy playing his games, but I don't GM like he does. And I think that's what everyone here has to figure out if they're going to GM is, one, your style, two, how much work you actually want to put into it. And trust me when I say this, put as much work into it without it making it work. You know what I mean? So, like if you spend like 2 hours making an episode, and you're like, fuck, this is stressful because I have all these other things to do. It's not going to be fun for you. Because you have to like take time out of real life for a hobby. You know what I mean? You're interfering with important shit. So what I suggest is put as much work into it where it's still fun to do. It's not like, oh, it's an 8-hour-a-day job that I have to do. I hate going to work, and then I come home and I go back to work GMing this game. Then there's no point in doing it. Make it fun for you, and it will translate into fun for your players. Sorry for the tangent, I'm done.
I love that.
Yeah, no, you're good. I pretty much agree with everything you said. In fact, in the past, and maybe I obviously not everybody is around all the time for them to hear it, but I have said, that this is, especially with the social contract, if you're the, and I know you weren't here for the last one, that one, but like if you're the GM, number one, like, yeah, you're there to have fun too. Like, you're just like everyone else. You are a player. You're just playing more characters. So you should be able to have fun too. But like the social contract says you make sure others have fun too, because you're going to have fun. And if you're GMing a game where you're not having fun, then yeah, you should not be there. Now it gets to the point where, so like my experience, and especially recently, and like a year and a half ago, where it got to the point where it wasn't I wasn't having fun anymore. Like if it gets to that point, then yeah. Then if it was any other game, like if it was one GM and 5 to 7 players and that's it, and not a server with 30 people, then yeah, I would totally agree. I would take another 3-month break or whatever. That's why I put a pause on Task Force Mirage. Not necessarily because I didn't enjoy that. I actually enjoyed that immensely. It just like Excelsior, but with everything else going on, I had to sacrifice that for at least a month. So yeah, I agree with everything he says. We are different in GMing styles, and that's something that you, like he said, you will have to figure out, like what your style is. You can do anything in between. If you want to do like just have a sentence, like they meet a colony of. In fact, I'll give you an example. I have an app on my phone that basically randomizes plot devices and plots. So I did a one shot recently. I was like, whatever I click, whatever random plot comes up, that's what I'm a GM. So I click on it, and it says, that you get to a colony. And you find a colony, and they have like these boxing tournaments that they're like blood sports, and there's a drug that basically makes everybody into anyone who takes the drug into like a murdering sociopath. And so I was like, okay, well, and that was it. That was what I started with. And I was like, okay. Oh, and the other thing was basically people were leaving that planet and infiltrating back into society in the Federation, or in the, in the Galactic Empire, as the app calls it, or whatever. But basically, like, it was supposed to be like some a mystery thriller type of thing. So I was like, okay, well, how do I turn that into Star Trek? And then that became 3 or 4 pages, like, and you could do anything in between that one sentence to 4 notebooks. I happen to think the notebook thing is just what I find fun because I'm a writer. I like going on those different, branches and saying, okay, what could they do here? What could they do? That's just what I find fun. So I'm not burnt out on that. I'm not burnt out on writing because I'm a writer. I'll never be burnt out on that. I take breaks from it because it's important to do that. But I'm burnt out on the personal level of dealing with people and trying to find people to help and that care. That's the part I'm burnt out about. So I agree with pretty much everything he says. So that's as far as. Well, actually, let me look at this before I say that. The other thing about being a GM, and this is super important, is especially here and now, because like I said before, we're all lucky that we have each other and that we have other GMs here. I mean, some GMs GM a lot, and some GMs don't GM at all anymore. But at least we have people here that we can talk to about it and that we can ask for help. So if you're a GM and you're struggling, don't be like me and try to do it all on your own. Definitely try to ask for help, even if it's just a little bit. Just be like, hey, can you make that character sheet for that NPC that I forgot? And most people are gonna be like, sure. So that's just a super basic thing that everyone should know is just ask for help. It's not hard. I tend to prefer to get to know people for a really long time before I ask for help, because I come from the background of, if you ask for help, you're useless and basically you can't be trusted to handle your own shit. And that's just my background. Not me personally, but my family history and everything like that. So I struggle asking for help. So I like to get to know someone like Mac and Durlock before I actually go to them and be like, hey, because I don't ask for help that often, and they know that I don't. And so when I do ask, hey, can you do this? They actually take it seriously instead of just, oh, Aaron's being Aaron again, like some people. Because there's some people that I've met who just every 5 seconds they're asking me for something. And normally I have no problem with giving, because I used to be a very, very giving person. Now I'm more of a cynic. But after a while, it still gets to be a lot. So I'm not the kind of person that asks for help a whole lot. But if I do, that's the other thing. Is because I used to be so giving and giving my time and my energy and money and help to other people, I always assumed that they would do the same for me. And it became a startling culture shock for me when I realized that, when you ask someone, hey, my tire went flat, can you come pick me up? They're gonna say no. To me, that wasn't I didn't even consider that. I was like, well, as long as they're not in another state or super busy, they're probably gonna But no, sometimes they're just hanging out with friends and they don't want to leave their friends. And to me, that wasn't really I never considered that, because I came from a close knit family that basically did everything. We didn't like asking help from others, and we didn't like that, but we helped each other. And so when my friends just decided they didn't want to be my friends anymore because they didn't want to spend time with me, or they didn't want to help in the tiniest of ways, then I basically kind of just said, well, that's just humanity now. So but yeah, not everybody's like that. Obviously not everybody is as cynical like me, but if you need help, most people on this server are pretty good about at the very least replying if they can't help for whatever reason. But yeah, obviously we're all here to have fun. But me being in the situation I'm in order for me to have fun, I need to be the big picture idea guy. I need to be that's why one of the reasons why I was like, ooh, the strategy game that with the admirals, that'd be cool, and then we can have a bunch of little smaller campaigns. But I'm the one who's the visionary, I guess you could call it. I have this grand idea, but it's really, really difficult for me to put it in actual practice without help, because just my personality type. And Kat, you should know this. I'm INFJ/P, which basically translate into I'm super introverted, super intuitive. I'm more emotional than I should be, honestly, and I'm super perceptive. All of those things basically translate into I have these big ideas, but I'm not a detail oriented person. Getting them actually done is it's really difficult for me. Not necessarily on a day-to-day basis. I can be okay, let me sit down and do this, but just just looking at all the things that I have to do and being like, oh man, that's a lot. Like I get overwhelmed with that bit. So yeah, if you need help, just ask. That's why I like whenever people like express what their strengths are. Like, okay, I know how to do this. I can do this. So that I don't have to actually go to them and be like, hey, can you help with this? And then be like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, okay, I just asked for no freaking reason. Like I feel like an idiot, and now I'm embarrassed because I asked for help and someone doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about. So yeah, it's like I said, I prefer to get to know people before I do anything like that. So I obviously suggest, well, number one, if we're more active in the server, we will get to know each other. I know Jamie, or I know Mac pretty well. I'm getting to know Josh very well. I know Mambo relatively well. I know Dark. Getting to know Kat. I know Durlock very well. Like, and because we're active, even when we're not active in the general chat, we're talking in private messages. So. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have for today. Because I think I mentioned this before. I had to get rid of the stage, and put the voice chat because it was just screwing up everything. Like I getting static in the headphones. YouTube was screwing up. OBS, just everything. So hopefully this works and records better. Does anyone have any questions before we go? Because I do have to go do something.
I don't have a question per se. I just want to throw something out there, see how everyone feels about it. We're looking to. You said this before, right? You're looking to get 5, 6 different games going in the same universe, but you're not going to be GMing a good portion of anyone.
That's like best case scenario for like the end of the year or next year. Yeah, it depends on a whole lot of things. Right now, I want to get season 4 of like. I want to get season 4 of TFM and the Excelsior stuff done and everything like that, and maybe start Starfleet Academy up again. But other than that, like I don't want to get ahead of myself because I know that we're still. I mean, we're all still, even me, we're all still learning a lot of this GMing stuff. So I don't want to like just say, okay, we're doing 12 games this week. Like I don't want to do that, no. But like eventually that'd be cool.
But what I'm saying is because Kat plans to do a game.
Okay.
Just a one shot. And what I suggest is we all do that.
Well, no, yeah.
Random day, just throw it in the LFG and be like, hey, I'm gonna do one shot. It's gonna be unconnected to anything else. Slap together a character, and we'll do this quick little session. And that way, everyone gets a chance to GM. And I mean, if you're planning for this to happen at the end of the year, people could do multiple shots and then kind of get their footing as a GM. Be like, oh, well, I tried this, it didn't work. My strengths are over here, so I should focus on this. Just let them feel it out before they actually get into a proper game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that was always the plan. Especially, I think we talked about it last week or something like that. Where we were gonna start doing one shots, starting the new timeline, so that at the beginning of next year or end of this year, when we do finish up this campaign, we can start the next campaign with at least a few good GMs who have done some one shots and are confident in their ability. So that's always definitely.
That's all I'm pointing at. I can do a one shot right now, but I'm saying just plan it out, get 3-4 people together, and then run a quick little session. That way, I feel like I'm not trying to put this down, these little meetings we have, but I feel like that's a better team.